why you don't know what you want anymore. You don't feel empty. You feel unclear, like something inside you went quiet, and now every decision sounds the same. You open your phone, you look at your life, you think about the future, and there is no pull, no excitement, no real yes or no, just noise. People tell you to follow your passion, to listen to your heart, but you don't hear anything, and that scares you, because you remember a time when you did feel something, when you had opinions, dreams, preferences. Now you just feel adaptable. You don't choose what you want. You choose what causes the least friction, the least disappointment, the least conflict. And slowly, without realizing it, you stopped asking yourself what you want at all. This didn't happen because you're weak. It happened because you learned early that wanting was dangerous. Maybe when you wanted too much, you were told to be grateful. Maybe when you needed something, it was inconvenient. Maybe when you expressed yourself, it created tension. So you learned something very important. Your wants were a problem. So you adapted. You learned to read people instead of listening to yourself. You learned to be agreeable instead of honest. You learned to choose safety over truth, and it worked. You became low maintenance, easy to be around, emotionally mature. But there was a cost. Every time you ignored your feelings, your inner voice got quieter. Every time you chose what kept you accepted, you moved further away from who you really were. Now you sit with choices in front of you and feel nothing. Not because you don't care, but because you were never allowed to. Your nervous system learned that desire leads to disappointment, that need leads to rejection, that expression leads to conflict. So it shut it all down. This is why you don't know what you want anymore. Not because you don't have a self, but because your self learned to hide. You might notice this in small moments. When someone asks, "Where do you want to eat?" and you truly don't know. When someone asks, "What do you want to do with your life?" and your mind goes blank. When someone asks, "What do you need right now?" and your body feels empty. You learn to exist for others, but not for yourself. There is a quiet grief in that, a grief no one sees. The grief of living a life that looks fine, but doesn't feel like yours. The grief of not knowing who you are without someone else in front of you. You may feel lost, unmotivated, disconnected. But what you're really feeling is something deeper. You're feeling the absence of self-trust, because for a long time, you weren't allowed to trust what you felt. You had to adapt. You had to stay small. You had to be easy. Now your mind keeps asking, "What should I do?" But the real question is, what do I want? And that answer feels dangerous, because wanting means risking disappointment. Wanting means needing. Wanting means choosing. And you were trained not to. Healing doesn't begin with finding your purpose. It begins with listening to your body again, with noticing what feels slightly lighter, what feels slightly heavier, what feels right, what feels wrong, not loudly, quietly. You don't need a grand passion. You need permission to want, to prefer, to choose, to feel. One truth you need to hear: you didn't lose your desires. You learned to silence them, and they can come back, slowly, gently, safely. Because the goal is not to be fixed. The goal is not to be fixed, but to become whole. If this felt like it was written about you, it's because it was. And you're not broken. You're remembering yourself.